Hey everyone, welcome to the Light Up Your Metabolism podcast. Today I have a very special guest joining us for the show, and I met him when I was in El Salvador, and I was overhearing a conversation that he was having with someone else there. It wasn't private. I wasn't being a creep or anything, but I was just blown away at everything Mark was saying. You can just tell that he has such a wealth of knowledge, and he is so well spoken and has such a great way of explaining difficult concepts. But getting to know Mark as a friend, during and after the retreat, what really struck me was the power of his story. And he shared about how he was able to really reverse autoimmunity and all of the health challenges that he had and how he overcame them. And so throughout this whole episode, there's, essences of his story and his lessons and learning and takeaways. And I just think you'll find it to be such a valuable episode, and also just a beautiful reminder of the fact that no matter where you're starting from, I truly do believe there's so much healing that is possible for each and every one of us. And sometimes it can feel like, well, I had this, so I just can't get to the next place. Like for me, my story is like, well, I had so many antibiotics as a kid, and it's like, okay, and yeah, that sets you back a little bit, but you can still have really deep healing. And I think that for so many of us, it really starts with believing that we can get to a place where we want to be. Like the ability to envision our lives without this issue is a really important first step, at least even just the intention to believe that our health could look vastly different. And yeah, I just think that is the message that was really, that I really just want to share as sort of a highlight to what you're going to hear in this episode with Mark. So Mark has a new podcast coming out. It is not released yet, but be sure to follow him on Instagram. He's got great content. He's a great speaker. And if you want to find his work, I'm sure you can find him on lots of other podcasts, guesting. And yeah, I'm super excited for you guys to get to know him. And please welcome to the podcast, Mark Dini. Friends, I am so excited to welcome on my dear friend, Mark Dini, who I met when we were in El Salvador. Mark has an amazing, inspiring story, and he, like me, moved sort of from this holistic, functional, biohacking type space. And I like to say that we saw the light, and now we are embracing more of more circadian and quantum strategies and adding that as a foundation of how we practice. So Mark, thank you so much for being here. So excited to talk to you today.
Oh, Dani, my pleasure, my darling. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm always humbled and grateful when people invite me on their show. So just thank you very much. I really do appreciate it.
Well, I overheard you talking when we were on the retreat before I really knew you. And I was like, he knows a lot of things. I was like, oh my gosh. So I'm just like sitting there absorbing everything that's in your brain. So I'm so excited to have you here. And let's start with your story. You have an incredible story of healing and trials and all those things. So start wherever you feel you'd like, and we'll start from there.
All right, perfect. Thank you, my darling. So my healing journey starts when I'm very young. So when I was born, I got diagnosed with meningococcal septicemia, which is meningitis B. It's the worst kind of meningitis you can get. Now, this started when I was only 9 weeks old, and the first doctor that my mum took me to said it was an ear infection. And my mum, luckily, having mother's instinct, didn't believe him at all and said, no, we're going for a second opinion. And luckily she did, because if she didn't, I would have been dead. So that second opinion plus that other doctor who my mum went to see and said, no, this isn't an ear infection, this is like meningococcal septicemia, saved my life. The unfortunate side of that is that with that kind of disease at that age, they just pump you full of so much antibiotics. Your body just hasn't got a chance to build and hasn't got a chance for its immune system to become stable and all those things that we know are very similar to like if you have like a C-section or something where you're just not gifted that start. And so from that moment all the way through my childhood, I had pretty much every illness known to man. So my mum's got a very, very thick book of all the things that I had. And I guess outside of, I don't know, maybe AIDS or something like that, I had everything. So I had pneumonia, whooping cough. Oh God, I can't even think of all the things that I had. Strep throat, ear infections, chest infections, you name it. I lost sight for a little while. I remember it specifically. Like I could if I was sat in the lounge and my mum opened a curtain, I could just about see this very, very thin line of light in my vision. But other than that, everything else was dark. I lost hearing for a little while as well. Just copious amounts of antibiotics, which, as I say, from a starting point isn't the best place to start. And then this continued pretty much all through my later childhood, my teenage years. I had, when I was 13, chronic acne, literally from my waist up, back and front, all over my face, all over my head, on my chest, stomach, back, everything. And unfortunately, they put me on Roaccutane, which has already been proven like 72% chance of getting some form of an autoimmunity later on in life from Roaccutane. Yeah.
You're kidding. We have Accutane.
Same thing.
You have a 70% chance of getting an autoimmune disease?
Yeah, specifically like IBD, that kind of thing, because it ravages the stomach massively. Because obviously, as we know, most skin related issues are coming from some kind of internal gut issue, whether that's something to do with the gut itself or whether it's a stealth pathogen of some kind. So they basically just napalm it with the Roaccutane, and then that's kind of the reaction. And again, not everybody gets a symptomology from it, but
my
is
brother doesn't have an autoimmune issue or doesn't seem to have issues, and he took it. Yeah. I was on antibiotics, not Accutane, but I was on antibiotics for my skin, and they told me it would make me. I remember they told me it would make me photosensitive, and then I would burn. Yeah. And then I did get a little bit of a sunburn on like a cloudy day, and like I remember that. But I had
awful.
A lot of issues that you had fewer. But definitely relating, because it's that early antibiotic use that just wipes you out. And it's so crazy. Anyway, continue, please.
And and we're not going to, I'm not going to sit here and point fingers at doctors or anything, because, as I say, if it wasn't for the doctors, I'd have been dead. Well, actually, if it wasn't for my mum, I'd be dead. But if it wasn't for the doctors believing her and doing more tests, I would have been dead. So I think as well, it's the known knowns and the unknown knowns and the unknown unknowns. Like, they didn't know back in the 80s that if you napalm the gut with an antibiotic, which has no preference over any bacteria, it just kills them all, you're also killing the ones that you need. And if you do that, that's great, because it's almost like a reset, start from zero, but you now got to put in the ones that you actually need back into the body again. And there was none of that back in the 80s. They didn't know that. We didn't know there was a microbiome back then. We didn't even know we had good bacteria back then. So these things were not spoken about. And so there would have been no way of them knowing. So I don't place blame with anybody. It just meant that as I grew up, my health wasn't the best that it could have been. And it just meant that I had a lot of things that I had to deal with as I grew up because of that. There were a lot of aftermath things that were going on. So, as I say, the acne, the Roaccutane, all of that type of stuff. And that was quite a difficult period. I was 13 and I had it all the way up until I was 17. I didn't go on Roaccutane until I was 16. And that stuff is strong. Like I could literally peel the skin off my nose. It was that bad. Yeah, like it would literally come off like a snake shedding its skin. So, luckily, at that point, though, I say luckily, I was was it 16 or was it 15? It probably would have been 15. I was at a bodybuilding gym. I started when I was 13. And one of the guys at the gym was just like, oh, I used to have that until I took steroids. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah. He's like, maybe you should just try it. I was like, all right. So I tried Anavar at the age of 15, which probably wasn't the best thing to do. Actually, no, I know it wasn't the best thing to do. But that's actually what got rid of the acne. The Roaccutane didn't do anything. I started it after the Roaccutane had finished, and the Roaccutane didn't really do too much. But the steroids is what leveled it out, I guess. I don't know the mechanisms of how.
You don't know the mechanism. Interesting.
No, I don't know. I think it might have been a hormonal thing. So I think obviously the anavars come in and it's switched androgen receptor sensitivity and increased test and what have you. So I'm assuming that's what it did, but I've not actually looked into it. I haven't actually thought about it at
Interesting.
all.
Yeah.
So I might have to do my research onto that
now.
one. I'm gonna have to do my detective work on that one now.
Yeah.
And yeah, then it was just like accidents were the things that happened to me after that point. So my PE teacher when I was at school, when I was 15, he did a static rugby tackle demonstration and he actually followed through with the tackle. And he put my kneecap around the back of my leg. Yeah, not pleasant.
I get weird about bones. Oh my God.
So I won't go into too much more detail about that, but he very badly messed up my knee. And I had to learn how to walk again. That's how bad it was. Yeah. And at the time,
if you lived in the States, that he would have been sued.
we tried to sue him, but unfortunately, my expert witness made a fatal error when they asked him if Mark would have known that he was going to be tackled and he could have braced himself ready for it. Would it have made a difference? Well, the obvious answer would have been yes, it would have made a difference. But he said no. And so then the judge went, well, then what are we doing here then? And I was like, oh no. So anyway, that didn't go down very well, obviously, as you can imagine. So then it was rehab for a long time. As I said, I had to wear a cast for about 4 months. Then I had to learn how to walk again. Then I had to learn how to run and train and move and all that type of stuff. But yeah, again, back in the early 90s, the rehab and the biomechanics wasn't even a thing. There were no biomechanic guys around or women where I lived. It literally was just physio. So it was a case of, okay, so you're going to go to the gym and you're going to do these exercises. You're going to do hamstring curls on a Swiss ball. It was very basic stuff, which is great because it rehabbed me, but it didn't train my body how to move again properly. It just taught my body how to cope with the injuries that had been left over and the compensatory mechanisms that had been left over, should I say.
Yeah.
So that was injury number one. Then I re-injured it again, had another surgery on that one then, another keyhole surgery where they trimmed the cartilage again. And at this point, 2 surgeries in, they didn't know I'd partially torn my ACL. They didn't know that I'd partially torn my MCL. And they didn't know that I'd damaged the articular cartilage around the kneecap. So this just started to wear and tear. The ACL and MCL never knitted properly. They ended up knitting a little bit shorter. Then, I'm trying to think of other operations that I had. I've had 7 surgeries so far. Then when I was 23, they diagnosed me with kyphosis, with Schauman's disease. And so obviously kyphosis is that upper cross rounded syndrome. Okay. That was probably coming from playing too much Super Nintendo, I'd imagine. But the Schauman's disease is basically where the middle to the lower portion of your back, the vertebrae, rather than being separated by a nice wedge of a disc, it's quite thin and grey rather than white. And the vertebrae aren't smooth, they're ridged like knuckles. And so they said to me, by the time that you're 30, you're going to be bent at 90 degrees like a 90-year-old man. We're going to have to put a metal rod in your spine. I was like, you're not putting a metal rod in my spine. I was like, I'll fix this myself, thank you very much. So didn't go that route, which was very, very beneficial to me because obviously I'm now here at 43 years old and I can bend and flex and run and jump and I don't have a metal rod in my spine. So I don't move around like Val Kilmer in Batman. Yeah. I've got absolutely no rotation whatsoever. So they wanted to do that. Then, God, what else? This shoulder I've had rebuilt. I was quite a big bodybuilder back in the day and I tore the rotator cuff doing a shoulder press and needed to have all of that rebuilt. Same thing happened to this shoulder and this elbow due to CrossFit. So I was a CrossFit coach and I also was a semi-professional CrossFit athlete at one point in my life. And, the whole thing about CrossFit is, you're in the middle of a WOD, there's a time limit, you can't stop. Well, that's your mindset anyway. So I'm doing handstand push-ups. I hear a pop in my shoulder and I'm like, there's no pain. I'll just keep going because I've got 5 more reps to go. On rep number 2, I felt a pop in my elbow. So yeah, it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. So this one, I tore the epicondyle ligament in the elbow. This one, I tore the labrum. So it's known as a slap tear. So
lots of injuries.
Lots of injuries happening. Yeah. So seven injuries that needed surgery. And the last one was in 2020 when they fully fixed my knee. And I have to give thanks to the guy, Dr. What was his name? Ian McDermott. great consultant, great guy. He's the only knee surgeon in the UK that actually can do cartilage transplants, which are quite rare.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think it's his kind of approach. I think he teaches how to do it. It's his thing.
Mm-hmm.
But he's the one that found out I had a partially torn MCL, partially torn ACL. So he did something called a pie crust to fix all that out, where they pull it apart again. And since then, my knee's been perfect. And then since then, I've been working with a guy in London who's basically got rid of all of the compensatory mechanisms. So the body, as you know, the body keeps the score, the body knows the score, and it keeps the trauma in layers. So it will start in the fascia, in the water, as you know, in the fascia, and then it will come up through layers through the nervous system. So things like a paleo or a crew touch, or in the tendons or in the ligaments. And he uses muscular neurology to find what level of trauma or what level of alert this is in the body. Like, is it a top priority or a bottom priority? And then he removes it based on what level that is. And he uses like neurological drills and makes you look in different places to fix all that stuff, which is fascinating.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so cool. I want to go to the UK.
This guy is amazing.
To my list.
Honestly, when you come over, I'll introduce you.
Spice Girls tour. Second, Harry Potter tour. And then third, I'm going to see this guy. And you have
to come see this guy. And you've got to come see me as well. But listen,
of course.
I'll take you to the Harry Potter tour because it's literally 20 minutes down the road from me.
Oh my gosh. I'm in the middle of re-listening to these books. I just started book 6. Like, this is also why I was up late last night and I'm tired, is because I can't stop. I'm very... Anyway.
Okay. So question for you then. Are you more of a Audible reader or a reader reader? You're an Audible reader.
For sure. And I never used to be. When I was in school, I feel like I'm a very visual person, and I have I used to remember, on the bottom of this page, it was this thing and I underlined it twice. Like I have that visual. And so seeing things always used to help me learn. Right. But I think ever since podcasts started coming out and I was listening as I was driving, there was something about that listening and then just focusing on something else. Like, I could, if I, for example, lost my place in a podcast and I went back too far, I would be like, oh no, I heard this already. And I would know where I was in the car. I was turning around this corner when I heard this. I don't know. So yeah, now I'm a very auditory person. And also I'm, you know how much I love British accents. So I'm enjoying hearing you. I've been listening to this British narrator. It's great.
Amazing.
But anyway,
amazing.
Sorry. I have
no, that's actually
huge
that's
fan
fine.
of the Brits. I always wanted a British accent myself, but that time has passed. So
I think it depends on what kind of British accent you'd want, whether you want a posh
nice
one or whether you want a core blimey geezer one. I think it really depends on which one you want. And also we've also got like the rude boy in it. We've got that kind of accent as well. You get me? We've got those ones too. So I don't know which one you'd actually like.
I like yours. I'll take yours.
Mine. Okay, we'll go with mine. That's fine. That's good. I don't want to keep the accent going. But I think with the audio side of things, I'm the same. Like I don't when I'm driving or if I'm going for a walk, unless I deliberately leave my phone at home when I go for a walk, which I do, I do this like every Monday. I used to do this through lockdown. I used to do like microdose Monday, where I'd do a microdose and I'd go for a walk, but I'd leave everything at home and I'd disappear for like 4 hours and I'd just be amongst the what I could see, the pixies and the unicorns. So
I love that.
That's when I don't have my phone on me, but I'm the same as you. Like if I'm listening to something, I retain it differently to what I do when I read a book. So if I'm reading a book, I can't have a distraction. I have to be in the book and silence or a little bit of music on in the background. And it's just like now there's nothing else going on. I can read it then. And I've got tons of books, which I'll read like that. But if I'm getting a book that I don't know, or there's an author that I don't know and somebody's recommended it to me, I'll probably get it on Audible first. I'll listen to it because I find listening to something on Audible, listen to a podcast, it's like hypnotherapy when you're asleep. Because your conscious is out of the way, and your subconscious is paying attention, you actually remember way more from that book than what you would do if you'd actually read it. Because when we're reading, we're sub-vocalizing in our head. That's one of the crappiest things they teach you at school, is to say out loud in your head the words when you're reading it. So the cat sat on the mat. If you say that in your head as you're reading, that's sub-vocalization, and you can only read as fast as you could sub-vocalize, right? But if you think about looking at a picture on the wall, if you had a picture of a beach on the wall and you looked at it, You wouldn't have to look at each section of that picture in order to know that it's a beach. You'd look at it in its entirety and go, beach. That's how we can read. We can read like that. We can look at a whole sentence and we can know that whole sentence instantly if we don't subvocalize. And that's how you can
increase... Is that what speed reading is?
Yes. This is what Jim Quick teaches. It's like
you know how to do it? I'm sure you do. Oh,
yeah,
you're so...
yeah.
How long does it take to learn?
Comfortably doing it where you notice how quick you can do it, probably about 2.5, 3 months. It's not too long.
Oh.
It's not too long at all. It's just about, it's learning how the eyes follow each other. So one eye's the leading eye, one's the following eye, and it'll be broken down in sections like that as you read, when really you could theoretically go down, you could go this way, you could go any direction.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So I don't know if you've ever seen these words where each word is jumbled, so you'd spell it incorrectly on purpose, but you'd have the first letter. I've seen that
whole thing, and you can just read it as
there we go. Right?
That's like, okay. That's an insane thing.
So if you look at those, the reason why you can read those so quickly is because you can't subvocalize it, because you can't read the word. Because it's back to front. You can't read it, but you can understand it. And that's how the brain sees words. It sees it as pictures, not as actual letters making a word. So the longer it takes you to subvocalize, the slower your reading is. Remove the subvocalization and you can speed read at rapid pace. I don't know if you remember the film Short Circuit. I don't know if you ever remember that. No. It was a robot who would just input, and he'd go nuts about reading because he'd just go through it quickly. That's how you can read. And all you have to do then is work on retention. So you would say to yourself, right, I'm going to read chapter 1 exactly like that. And I'm going to write down at the end of chapter 1, what can I recall instantly? Then I'm going to go back to chapter 1 and I'm going to take my time and I'm going to read through it at a standard pace. Because some things you can speed read and you'll want to speed read. Some things you don't want to speed read. So if you're reading like a scientific journal, or like I've got that new Dr. Jeffrey Guy's quantum biology book, right? I'm not going to want to speed read that, because if I do, I'm not going to get full comprehension because there's going to be quantum stuff in there. So you can't speed read PubMed. Like there's no way you're going to do that. You're going to need to go through it in stages, where something like Rupert Sheldrake, or I've got this new book called Your Sixth Sense, which is about increasing your sixth sense. I could probably speed read through those because I'm not going to need to take in everything. I just need the main points. So you just pick and choose. And so that's how I do it. I just practice one chapter at speed, write down what I've remembered, then go back at another point, not straight away because that's cheating. Go back at another point, maybe later in the day or the next day, read it at a slower pace and see how much of it I actually retained. And that then trains your brain to pick out the main points, because with most books, I would say at least 50% of it's rubbish. It's just jargon. It's just because they've needed to pad it out, because the copywriters have been like, no, the editors have been like, no, you can't have a 50-page book. Like, that's a pamphlet. You need at least 300. So people need to kind of expand it out a little bit. But I don't know how we got on the topic of speed reading, but yes.
Oh, it came from my listening to Harry Potter.
Oh, yes, Harry Potter.
I love the way your brain works, and I like how much you know, and I feel like I can listen. You make everything interesting. So, so you had a lot of accidents, you had a lot of illnesses. What about the autoimmune thing? Okay. Is that coming next?
It is. So, the CrossFit side of things, the injuries, at that time, this would have been 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. So 5 years. Up until...
That recently, huh?
Yeah, up until lockdown. And I'm not going to use the word COVID because I don't believe in all of that. Okay. We're just going to go with lockdown.
Okay.
So up until lockdown, I had 40 plus clients as a personal trainer consistently for 5 years. I had like a waiting list all the time, like 20 deep waiting list. And I worked 65 to 75 hours a week as a personal trainer. So I would wake up at 4:30. I would grab a coffee by 4:45. I would be at the gym by 5:30. I'd be training clients by about 5:45, 6 o'clock. I would go back to back until about 1. I'd throw down protein powder mixed with raw oats and water as my meal. Yeah. But that would have been after about 4 cans of Monster at that point. Yeah, I used to drink so much caffeine, it was insane. So that would have been like 4 cans of the white Monster. I then would have necked this protein shake with raw oats, which we know is great for the gut.
Oh
That was
my
like
God.
razor blades. I would then
Yes.
do 2.5 hours of CrossFit training. I would then, that would finish at about, so 1, 2, 3, about 3:30. I'd go home, shower, eat. Then I would be back at the gym for 5, and I'd be there till 10. And then I'd be home for about 10:30. I'd be in bed by midnight, and I'd be up at 4:30. And I did that Monday to Saturday. And then Sunday, I spent programming for every client by hand because I refused to go online. I was like, no, not doing this whole online business. I'm going to go old school. I'm going pen and paper. So I don't have it anymore. I had reams of paperwork from people, and I've had to obviously shred it and stuff. But I did that for, as I say, at that level, I did that for 5 years. And
5 years.
And what changed was the fact, one, I basically didn't see any of my mates anymore, didn't see my family anymore. And two, as much as I looked fantastic, when I woke up in the morning, you could hear my bones creaking. I was like an old man. Like I couldn't walk. I'd get out of bed and I'd be like, oh, my back or my shoulders or my knees or
You're
all of it.
so inflamed.
Oh, the inflammation from CrossFit was insane. And yet I'm sitting there like...
And your diet and the Monster and
Yeah.
you were inside under those
All the
lights the
time.
whole time.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It was shocking, absolutely shocking. I mean, yeah, I was like probably like sub 6% body fat all year round, but I never got stronger. I never got faster. I was incredibly fit. Like when lockdown first happened, that was actually a blessing for me because I was probably another month away from a complete burnout where I'd have lost my shit. Sorry, I don't know if we can swear.
That's okay.
I would have, okay. I would have lost my shit if I hadn't because I was all work and no play and it just wasn't fun for me anymore. And at that time, I came across a company called Glycanage. Do you know who Glycanage are?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so it's run by a lovely lady called Nicolina and her COO called Zori. Beautiful people. I'd love to introduce you to them actually because I think you'd like them. And they do a biological age test, and it's using glycans, so IgGs, right? Glycans are sugar molecules that attach to proteins, and they stay in the body a long time. So you can use particular glycans to measure certain age parameters within the body. So basically what they're measuring is the age of your immune system. And they were running a competition. So I was like, whatever.
I got this.
And I got an email back saying, congratulations, you won. I was like, woohoo. So they sent me the blood test, and I've actually got one here, I think. Yeah, I still got one here. So this is them, Glycanage. So got one of their kits there. Little finger prick, 4 bits of blood on the paper, send it off. I then get a phone call from the CEO Nicolina. Are you free for a call on Zoom? I can be. Wow, what's wrong? We've never had a result like this. I'm thinking, I'm jacked and I'm amazing. I've got a biological age of 4.
Biological age.
Could you imagine? And they get me on a Zoom call. They went, right, so we're a little bit worried about you. I'm like, why? They're like, well, because at the time, how old was I? 2020. I can't do the maths. But so 4
late
years
30s.
ago, almost 5 years ago. So I'd have been late 30s. Yeah.
38, 39.
38, 39. My biological age was 70.
70?
70.
Almost
70.
double.
Almost double. More than at that
Holy-
point. It was almost the same age as... Actually, no, it was older than my mum at that point. So they said, right, we're worried about you. So we're going to team you up with one of our consultants. We're going to help you out. But during that call, they were like, oh, we love you. Like, we want you to be a consultant with us. I was like, cool, let's go with it. So I started to work with them. And that was a big wake-up call for me because I was like, right, the diet's not working. The training's clearly not working. And at that point, I'd just run my first marathon. I didn't train for it. The furthest I'd run was 10 kilometers. And my friend just said, do you want to do it for charity, wherever it was? I was like, yeah, sure, fine. We ran it in like 3 hours and 20 minutes at the hottest time of the year as well. And I didn't even train for it. Like, that's how fit CrossFit gets you. Like, your general physical preparedness is beyond belief. Okay. But anyway, so here I am, fit as a fiddle, or fit as a butcher's dog, as we'd say in the UK. But my immune system was flawed. And I was like, this isn't good. So I started changing things around, and this is when I really got into biohacking. So I got into biohacking probably around 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Bought myself a red light in 2018, which is down there somewhere. I've still got
Mm-hmm.
it, still works, but it's one of those flicker ones where if you watch it through a video, it flickers like mad. So my nervous system loves that one.
Oh gosh.
Not good. And got my first set of blue blocking glasses. I was using peptides at that time as well because of the CrossFit injuries and stuff. And I was just like, right, this needs to change. Like, I can't keep going this way. Like, it doesn't work. So I changed my training style. I found a guy called Marcus Philly, started doing all his type of training, which is functional bodybuilding. So it's a blend of CrossFit, because he's an ex-CrossFit athlete, blend of CrossFit and bodybuilding, basically. And it was a lot
Mm-hmm.
more mellow in that regard. Like, don't get me wrong, he had workouts, which if you wanted to throw up, he'd give you them. But they're a lot more mellow for me in that regard.
Yeah.
And I started training like that, changed my diet around. I wasn't anywhere near the quantum stuff at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But just started eating food rather than protein shakes and oats all the time. Started, obviously, as you know, with a biohacker, the second you go down that route, all of a sudden you've got like 500 pounds worth of supplements in the cupboard.
Mm-hmm.
It's not BCAAs anymore and creatine, because creatine's still there, but BCAAs
Mm-hmm.
have been thrown out. It's now like urolithin A and blah, 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 like all these things. So I started doing that, and at that point, my business was basically non-existent, because obviously I had a bunch of clients that were all in-person clients. They didn't want to be trained online.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, right, okay, I've got a bit of money saved up. I was like, I'll invest it in something. I'll relearn what I want to do, or restudy, what have you. And I came across an institute at the time called the Carter Institute, which is now known as the Institute of Health. And it's a functional medicine institute, basically. And I joined, met all the amazing people that I now know. Obviously, you met Daniel. Daniel was in the institute as well. And that's when I started learning blood work and started learning the nuances of like traditional Chinese medicine and herbs, like homeopathy, and utilizing essential oils. And like, they didn't really touch on circadian rhythms at that point, but it was more a case of like, they did focus on sleep, like making sure that you had good amounts of sleep and you're sleeping in a cold room, a dark room, like all of that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Then launched my business like that, like, okay, I'm going to do functional medicine. I'm going to start doing blood work and helping people, this, that, and the other, doing that. And then it got to 2022, and it was around about August time, we had our first institute meetup, because the guys who run it are in Australia. So they flew over. We all went up to Manchester, which is far for me from here. It's like a 3.5, 4 hour drive, I think it is, if I remember correctly. And that, I think it was like a couple of days before then, I just noticed that when I was going to the bathroom, there was just, upon like finishing, there was just a bit of blood. And I was like, it's probably nothing, probably like overstraining or something like that. And then when I'm up staying in the institute with one of my friends, I just noticed that I wasn't able to pass gas at all unless I went to the bathroom, which was weird. And I was like, that's odd. And so also embarrassing, because if you don't pass gas for most of the day or most of the night, and then you go to the bathroom in the morning, which most people do to empty their bowels, it's like a fanfare. Like, it's not a great thing to have happen when you're sharing a room with somebody that you've literally just met for the first time in person. Luckily, Joey, he's my podcast co-host. He's very understanding and knows functional medicine as well. So he knew something wasn't right. So by end of September, I'm in a really bad way. Like, I can't eat anything. I can't drink anything. And the second anything goes near my lips, there's this incredible urgency to go to the bathroom. And the only way I can describe it is, everybody's had that food poisoning experience where you are literally like, get out of the way, because you can't hold it. You know, if you don't get to that toilet that second, there's going to be an embarrassing nightmare. And the closer you get to that toilet, the stronger that urge becomes. It's a little bit like when you've been driving a long time and you really need to pee. The second you get within like 2 miles of your house, your bladder goes, oh, we're almost home. Increased pressure. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So that's how it felt, but all the time. And so I had a blood test done. And the way that I do blood work is I use a private lab. because I don't use the same markers as what you'll get from a GP. I use like 64 to 150 plus markers, and we use different ranges. Like GPs use conventional ranges, we use functional optimal ranges. So whenever I get bloods back from a private lab that use normal ranges but have the markers that I require, 3 or 4 are red, like high or low. Everything else is normally normal. The second that I put it into my blood sheet, all of a sudden, like 20 markers are too high, 10 are too low, the rest are nicely in the middle. Mine from the lab at that time, I didn't even have to put it into my sheet. Everything was red. My cortisol was 819. Yeah, it shouldn't be over like 300.
And this was after you're like working on all this healing?
Yeah, this was right at the beginning of when the autoimmune started to actually happen. Okay. So it was, my body was just in like full shutdown. Like my white blood count was through the roof, neutrophils were through the roof. As I say, cortisol was jacked. Every liver enzymes were through the roof. Like everything, my high sensitive CRP again through the roof. Ferritin was through the roof, which is bacterial translocation and all that stuff. So I showed it to my mentor at the time, and he was like, "Holy crap!" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, we'll help you get this calmed." He's like, "But you need to go and see someone." I was like, "All right." So I, luckily at the time, was quite what's the word I'm looking for here? Headstrong, where I was like, well, I'm still going to go to the gym. I want to go to the gym. It makes me feel better. So I went to the gym and I bumped into an ex-client of mine, and he looked at me, he said, "You look like Dracula. What's going on with you?" I was like, "Thanks, dude. Great way to make me feel better." And he was like, "So what's going on?" I was like, "Well, this is what's happening." I said, "I think it's IBD." He went, "Oh, my wife is the head of the board of gastroenterology. Well, on the board of gastroenterology at St Mark's, which is the gastroenterological hospital in the UK." And I was like, "Can I go and see her?" And he's like, "Of course you can." So in between all of that getting sorted out, I went to see my GP, who organised me to go and have a quick examination through another doctor. So he did an examination. He was like, "Right, I think it might be IBD. We're going to need to get you having like a colonoscopy done." So I was like, "All right." Went and had the colonoscopy done. No cancer or anything like that. And by the time that I went to see her, she'd got my results. Like, he was telling me that it was going to be like 2 weeks till I got the results. She had them within like days. And so she's pulled them up and she's like, "Yeah, really bad ulcerative colitis, like really bad ulcerative colitis. We're going to stick you on this medication called mesalazine, but that only works so long. You're then going to have options of like steroids, biologics, prednisone, all that stuff. But again, long case scenario, stoma, cutting out intestines, all that stuff." I was like, "Don't think so." I was like, "Okay, sure, whatever." And in my head, I'm thinking, delete. Like, I'm not listening to that. So came home, I was like, right, functional medicine side of things has got me like 60% of the way, maybe 50, but it's not stable. What do I do? And then it just dawned on me. I was like, peptides. I was like, oh my God, peptides. I was like, I need to do peptides. So signed up with Dr. William Seeds, SSRP, to do his peptide therapy certification, and started playing around with different combinations of peptides. First combination didn't work at all. Second combination worked a little bit, but only lasted a little while. Eventually stumbled upon this blend of 3 to 4 peptides, which just ceased everything.
Wow.
Bowel movements went back to normal, like 1 or 2 a day.
Wow.
And everything's formed again. Like, it wasn't like inconsistent, like inconsistency of like diarrhea 1 minute, constipation the other. It was like solid. Everything was fine. I was like, oh, this could be it. Then for 6 months, everything was okay. And then there was a moment when I was supposed to be doing something. I can't remember what it was. It was a friend's wedding. And I hadn't traveled very far outside of my home this whole time, because with this particular autoimmune, it locked me into my flat for 10 months. I could not leave. I was chained to my bathroom. If I stepped 2 minutes outside my door, the anxiety that I might have a problem was so strong, it created a problem. I would then have to sprint home to make sure that I was on that toilet straight away. And the amount of times that it was like this close was it was ridiculous. Like, I lost a ton of weight. I lost like 10 kilos, couldn't work or anything. So this idea of going to my friend's wedding was the first time I'd have to get in my car and drive a long distance. I'm sat on the motorway in traffic having a panic attack because I'm like, if something happens right now, I'm stuck. I can't do anything. What am I going to do? And eventually I got to the next turned off, came home. And I was like, you know what? I can't live my life like this. Like, this is not, it's not fixed. Clearly it's not fixed. It's, well, not long term anyway. Like, I've put a pause on it, but you know, if this anxiety,
if you guys are only listening to the audio, the reason we're laughing is because fireworks just started going off behind Mark as he's talking.
I don't know what I'm doing here to trigger all these beautiful things, but it made me realize that there was still a part of me that needed to be healed, and it wasn't being healed. And so I started searching gastroenterological, specifically IBD podcasts, thinking somebody somewhere will know something. And at this time, one of my clients was and still is one of the leading IBD specialists in the UK. She didn't have any ideas for me either. She's like, we've done everything. So it was a bit of a loss. I was like, well, what am I going to do? And then I stumbled upon this podcast by this gastroenterologist, I think it was like 4 years ago, interviewing this guy called Jack Kruse. And I was like, oh, okay, well, what have I got to lose? You know, I knew who Jack Kruse was at the time. I never really got involved with what he was talking about because whenever I listened to him, he seemed quite rude. And his energy at that moment in time, I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready to hear what he had to say. But this time I was like, sod it. I need to learn, and I need to let this judgment of him go because I don't know him and he could be speaking a lot of truth here. And I'm listening to what he's saying and I'm like, oh my God. And as you say, like, every word I'm seeing the light, and I've just got these things going off in my head. I'm like, this all makes sense. This all makes sense. Like, these are the things I am not doing. We are an outdoor mammal living in an indoor existence. This disease kept me indoors. Lockdown kept me indoors around blue light all the time, and that's when it all started to get triggered. And I live right next door to a train station, so I've got these big thick power lines that run down the side of my flat, so the EMF here is insane, hence why I wear all these things. And I've got shungai everywhere and what have you, because you're wearing yours as well, because I need to mitigate the EMF. So I listen to this podcast and I start practicing what he talks about in this podcast. So sunrise, I'm outside with sunrise, bare feet on the ground, weird guy in the middle of, when would it have been? December last year? Well, not last year, year before now. Shirt off in the middle of a park at like 8 o'clock in the morning with my feet on the grass, and everyone's like, what's this dude doing? And I don't mind me, morning. Home, following these circadian principles, then going back out again at UVA, again making sure I've got as much skin in the game as possible, getting as much UVA in my body as I possibly can for my morning walk. Like, nothing else mattered than these things. It was light, water, magnetism. So I got reverse osmosis machine. I dropped out a ton of supplements. I started to look at mitochondria and I started to like heal them. Ice plunging, literally like all the time. In winter I'm having ice baths and everyone's like, you're crazy. I'm like, I'm not. I'm healing. This is what's happening here. And I'm start applying all this quantum and circadian biology. At the time seemed a little, to everybody else, seemed like woo woo, but it just made sense to me. And I changed my whole flat, like all circadian friendly bulbs, got rid of like turning the Wi-Fi off at night, phones never in my bedroom, got rid of my my grounding mat on my bed, but kept the ones that I stand on or put my feet on when I'm in here. EMF blocking thing under my laptop. Like got like air tubes, all of it.
Yeah.
Like I went full Jack Kruse on everything.
Yeah.
I went mitochondriac, black swan, like straight away. And
amazing.
The biggest change was a part of the podcast that I didn't hear until I re-listened to it again, where he spoke about how the red light frequencies at sunrise, the reason why he says for people to act like the Sphinx and get your chest and your stomach exposed to the sun rise light is because in our stomach we have one of the highest concentrations of POMC, and this hormone gets cleaved into different peptides, as we know, but this also modulates the microbiome as well. So our bacteria in our stomach will change according to the seasons based on the amount of red light that they receive from sunrise specifically. So I was like, right, well, I've got to start doing this. So I'd go for my thing, shirt off. I'd make sure my stomach's exposed. Then I'd come home, put my red light panel on, and I would put that on my stomach. And I have like the little Bon Charge one as well. And I'd walk around holding this little Bon Charge on my stomach. And then I met these guys. I'm not doing a product placement here, I promise you. I met these guys who do this called the Kineon Move, which is a red light device which you can actually strap onto you. So it's got these little LEDs, and you can strap it onto any part of it. It's a bit like the Flex Beam.
Yeah.
Right.
I take my mini one and I'll put it in like the waistband of my, of my like yoga pants or whatever. I can't put it anywhere. I'll put it in my bra. I'll put it in my shirt, put it on my back. So but I can't, I would just have to balance it like on my neck, but
You'd be really good with a Flex Beam for your neck. It'd be really, really good for you. So so these guys, I teamed up with them and said, look, I'd be interested to see how it works, blah, blah, blah. That was the game changer. So now anybody that comes to me that's got IBD or IBS, I'm like, right, ground, sunrise, UVA, red light on your stomach. They're the main principles that you UVA, need to do.
Light on your stomach. What about darkness at night?
Now this is where it's important, because this is the thing that people forget. So everybody moans in the UK about how dark it gets in the winter and how cold it gets in the winter. And it's like, okay, but we have to understand that everything runs through a season. So in summer, we are in a breakdown to get better mode, so it's more catabolic and anabolic at the same time. So we have higher testosterone levels, we'll produce more muscle mass, we move more, all that type of stuff. It's very, very if we were looking at yin and yang, it's very yang. It's very go and get. Winter is that yin receiver. It's that empty vessel, and the usefulness of the empty vessel is its emptiness, right? So it's that kind of thing. Pardon me. And people forget that the winter is there for healing. We heal when we are asleep because we're in total darkness, and we are in total darkness. So that's when the body gets that signal. Okay, now we heal. Darkness is the same when it's in winter time and the shorter light period. So you shouldn't be pushing PRs and looking to get bigger and stronger in the winter, because it's going against the natural circadian flow of what we should be doing, which is resting and digesting. Basically, that's what winter is for. And as you know, and I'm not sure if your listeners will know this, if you've spoken about it before, but with melatonin being the major antioxidant and hormone of darkness, which gets made during the day in the light,
95% of it. 95% of it. I have looked that up in many places. It blows my mind. 95% of our melatonin made during the day.
And subcellularly as well, right? And then gets released from the pineal at night. So when people say, oh, they've got rubbish sleep, well, do you go outside? If you don't, then you're not producing much melatonin. So this is why, again, pushing people outside in winter is even more important, because in the UK right now, the sunrise is 8 a.m. in the morning and sunset is 4. So it's up at 8, goes down at 4. So the day is like this, nighttime is like this. Where in the summertime, summer's like this, nighttime's like this. Like we get very little amount of sleep in the summer because it's the sun goes down at like 10 and it comes up at like 4:30. So it's very short.
Gosh.
So winter, you want to be utilizing that darkness, because melatonin acts on the same receptors as vitamin D does. So we can't get vitamin D in the winter, so our body's got a backup system, which is melatonin. That is your most critical hormone in the winter period. So embrace the darkness. Like right now, I am making a trade-off of speaking to a beautiful young lady on her podcast with a light shining in my face, which is not darkness at this time of night for me, which it normally would be,
It's
because
gonna mess with your sleep.
I want to spread. No, it won't. It'll be fine. Once in a, as we know, we need to be anti-fragile, right? We can't be so tight to what we do, otherwise the body just capitulates into a mess. So now and again, it's not a problem. But this is a bio light, so it makes it a little bit more friendly. But embrace the darkness, like really embrace the darkness. And I know it's a pain because you can't see, and even my parents are now like this. Like my mum and my stepdad, my stepmom, I've got them all blue light blocking glasses. They clip over their normal glasses.
Do they wear them?
They all wear them now. They're all like this, trying to find their way around. Like my mum's got all the automatic red lights that come on as she walks around at night,
amazing.
so she hasn't got to turn the lights on. So I'm slowly getting them over to it, and they're in their 70s and they all wear glasses. So if they can all do it, anybody can do it. I don't believe that nobody cannot do that. But darkness is your
my mom
friend.
refuses to.
Okay, well that's different. That's different. As
she can, but refuses.
Exactly. As Hippocrates said, like before healing a man, ask him if he's willing to give up the things that makes him sick. So if people aren't willing to give it up, there's nothing that you can do. You just have to put it in front of them and say, this would be better for you. But if you don't want to, que sera, it's all on you. So make your best decisions for you.
That's
and
a question
that's all
I get a lot.
Do.
Like, how do I make so-and-so do this? I'm like, you can't make anyone do anything unless they're you're, in your legal custody or whatever. But exactly. Even then, like you can only lead a horse to water. You can shine by example, and eventually sometimes people come around, but it's not something, like even with spouses or different things, it's like, you have to have sometimes hard conversations. You have to set boundaries, but you can't make someone do something.
No, not at all. So. It's not how we do things either. And people will change in two ways. Either if they feel that they've discovered it themselves. This is my dad. So, hi dad, if you're listening. But like, I'll tell him to do something, or say tell him. I will recommend something to him. He won't do it. And then a month later, he'll send me a post on Instagram about the same thing that I told him about a month before, going, I'm going to try this. And I'm like, I told you. But that's how that's number one. And number two is the pain of staying the same has to be greater than the pain of the change.
Yeah.
When that happens, miracles happen, because that's the phoenix from the flames. That's when it's too painful to stay where you are. So that moment where you're looking at yourself in the mirror with your clothes off and you're like, I can't keep eating this food anymore because look at the state of me. Like, look at the state of me. I can't do this anymore. Once that image is burned into your brain, you can't get rid of it. And it makes you so sad that you have to make something change. You have to make that big change. Yeah. That'll change. That'll be it, because the pain is worse.
Yes.
But when you're in that comfortable uncomfortableness, you're comfortable being uncomfortable while you're there, which is what most people are like. No change is going to happen, because what they're after is, give me that pill, which still lets me live my shit lifestyle, but have the results that I want. It's like, well, no, no, doesn't work. Unfortunately, doesn't work. So but all we can do is help people and guide them. That's all we can do. If people want to do it, they do it. If they don't, they don't. There's nothing we can do.
For sure. So you started doing all the Jack Kruse things, all the circadian quantum principles with light, water, magnetism. Go a little bit more into the magnetism piece for people who are like, what do you mean, like magnets?
You could use magnets if you wanted to, but I say, like, this is a magnetic bracelet, so I wear that to keep me magnetized. There are devices that you can use. So a grounding mat is going to put you back in touch with a resonant frequency which the body is more capable of utilizing. So we are the only mammal which has endocrine glands in their palms and in their feet, which are sweat glands, and nobody ever stops to ask why. Like, if
we're the only mammals that have sweat glands on our hands and feet.
Yeah, because we would have been the only ones that would have been in constant motion across tectonic plates. So other animals, they traverse quite a long way, but then
Yeah.
they stop for a long period of time in one place. And so they don't need this semiconductive ability because they are much, much more in touch with nature than we are. So we would have maybe spent some time in one savanna area, and then we would have moved to another area. And then when that food ran out, we'd have moved to another area. So we were always constantly in touch with the ground and moving, but in different climates. So in a hot climate, if your palms and your
Mm-hmm.
feet sweat, when you then touch a tree or touch the ground, that sweat acts as a semiconductor and helps increase, well, not as a semiconductor, as acts as a, well, it just increases the ability of the body to absorb the negative ions coming from the earth. It just makes it easier. This is why when you go to a beach and you stand with your feet on the sand, lapping with the water, all of a sudden you feel amazing. Well, that's because you've got the water, which is grounding you, and it's got a lot of electrons in it from the sun. You've got the sand, which is a natural landmass, which is also conducting that same electron proton current through the earth, and the Schumann resonance coming through there. But then you've also got your bare feet on it, and they're wet.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit like why, like, if you've got a wet hand, you don't touch a plug socket,
Yeah.
right?
Because water is extremely conductive. Yeah.
There we go. So it helps with that conduction on there. And this is important because our mitochondria are EMF antennas. So they are constantly looking out for signals of native EMF signaling coming from the earth, coming from your environment. So that way, then your body knows where you are at all times. Latitude, longitude, altitude, all important. So the body knows what time of year it is, what season, where you are, what temperature is it, what time is it,
And then
all
what
this
time
stuff.
is it? That's the light, right?
Yep.
So we get the timing from specifically that blue light frequency,
Yep.
sky blue.
Yep.
And then we also, the other time giver to like what time it is off the secondary time giver would be food because it contains light information. And so
Exactly.
that's interesting. I knew about the timing, but I guess now that you say it, it's like, yeah, that's right. The idea of this magnetism piece, like birds, they follow like magnetic, of the magnetism from the earth. I believe they
Yep.
can see it or something like that.
I think so. I know
Yeah.
there's a part in their brain which does it. It
Yeah.
allows them to track the
Right.
magnetic pull.
So
100%.
that's how we know where we are. We know what time it is, so we can be oriented into what to do.
Yes.
Like that's the most important part because the body needs to know, is it summer? Is there a lot of food around? Is there going to be a lot of light? Is there going to be like abundance? And so it's going to rev up different processes. You just got done saying how our bodies do different things during different seasons of the year. So should it be building up? Should it be, doing all those types of things? Or should we be slowing down? Should we be repairing, detoxing, focusing on those types of things? So all of our environment gives our body information on what to do. So like you said earlier, if we're inside constantly with all these man-made, non-native EMFs running through the walls, through the train station, through the airwaves, like with, blocking out the light frequency from the sun, using artificial light, our bodies are confused AF. They have no idea where they are, what time of day it is, what time of year it is. And so they don't know what to do and things turn into chaos. So like, I love that beautiful reminder of these rhythms of nature and how important it is that we are in sync with all of them and that we're allowing our body to receive clear signals of what day it is, what time is it, where am I? And that's where just standing on the earth with bare feet, it's giving your body really important information and helping it heal at the same time.
We also have to remember that we are part of us, our mitochondria specifically, are a battery. And they need to have charge. And as I said, they look for this native EMF to charge them. And Jack Kruse just released a couple of days ago on his Patreon about magnetism and about how the Earth has lost and is losing at a very rapid rate its magnetic currency, its magnetic charge. And the further away from the equatorial center or magnetic poles you are, the worse you're going to feel if you don't have the capacity to constantly be grounded, like all the time. You would literally need to have your bare feet on the grass all the time to get the level of magnetism and negative ions and other things like that into your body to mitigate the effect of this now lack of magnetism. So this is why for us, when we were in El Salvador, the reason why we felt so amazing is because there's a volcano there, and that volcano is more active now because it's trying to balance the loss of magnetic polarity from the Earth by becoming more active. So as a volcano is becoming more active, and again, I'm hypothesizing from what he read, I'm imagining the magma and the core of the Earth is spinning faster or more to create more charge so that the magnetism can increase because it's aware that it's losing it. And it's not just losing it from its center, it's losing it from everywhere. So it's the gap between our planet and space. In that gap, this is where this magnetism is being lost.
It's being lost too. Are the satellites impacting this?
Because I would assume so.
Yeah, because I saw something on Dr. Alexis's her stories, and it was talking about how satellites are messing up the magnetism.
Of course, 100%, because these satellites are kicking out, that you've got to remember, to keep them running, they're solar powered, but they're AC, and also they're giving out current, aren't they? Because they're a satellite, so they're powered. So whatever conversion that's going on inside that satellite from the sun's light, AC current into a solar panel, and then turning it into a power charge to make the satellite work and function, well, that charge has got to emanate from somewhere, and I'd imagine it's coming straight back down again. It's a little bit like when you put a ceiling fan on. Well, the second you put a fan on, you're now creating an alien magnetic frequency because there's nothing on Earth which oscillates like that. So the second it starts to oscillate, it's not a non-native EMF. It's worse than that. It's an alien EMF. It's not even non-native. It's just not something the body even recognizes. So it's the same as when you're in a car. Anytime you have metal, which then rotates very, 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 very quickly, you generate an electric current. And when you're sat in a car and these wheels are going round, you are constantly creating a charge, which is an alien magnetic charge or an alien EMF frequency. So when we're now encaved in this box, we are just being cooked by this thing that's constantly rotating all the time, which is why we say to people, open your window. Simple. Just open your window. That's all you've got to do. Let the light in. It's just going to allow some balance with the protons and electrons going on. And definitely don't drive an electric car. Sorry, Elon Musk. Because you're now in an electric vehicle, which is basically an iPhone, with gyrating EMF frequency giving wheels while you're wearing your AirPods, right? Like on your phone, it could not be more bad for you. You know, who was it that said to us on the retreat that they started losing their hair when they were driving around in a Tesla? Who was that?
I forget who.
Oh, that was Olivia. That was Olivia.
Interesting.
Yeah. You know, and super, super clever woman driving around in a Tesla, her hair starts falling out,
Wow.
Yeah. So
interesting.
This is why, to go back to your initial point about magnetism, this is why magnetism and grounding particularly is so important, because we are completely out of touch all the time. Like right now, I'm on a first floor, completely disconnected from the earth. My body doesn't know where I am. I may as well be in flight. And I was thinking about this today, like when I'm asleep, I am not connected to the earth in any way, shape or form.
Me either.
So how do we fix that? Well, the only thing that I know of is what Sarah Pugh talks about, which is that Magnetico. That's the only thing that I know of that you can put on your bed. You don't think
a grounding mat that's plugged directly into the earth?
Oh, yes, that would do it as well. Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't do that. I can't stake it, so I have to plug it into the wall.
Why can't you stake it?
Because I've got nowhere to stake it. There's literally no earth here. I've got no earth.
What, is it just like concrete?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do you live? Get out of there.
Exactly. So there's nowhere for me to stake. And luckily in the UK, every every plug socket should be grounded because we have 3 prongs on our plugs, but you still have to check it. But even then, I listened to Sarah Kleiner's podcast recently with a grounding lady. I can't remember her name.
Yeah.
Very clever lady. And she said, it doesn't matter.
It'll come to me.
Is it Kelsey?
Intuition Physician, I know, is her handle on Instagram. I
can't remember her name, bless her.
Yeah.
But she said it was okay to use a grounding mat. She said it's better to use a grounding mat plugged into the wall than not use one.
Laura Conover.
That's it.
Yeah.
She said, but obviously it's better to have a grounding mat that's staked into the earth. And I was like, damn it, I've just thrown my mat away. So I was like, I have to buy another one now. But that would be good. That would be fine. But I think a Magnetico would take it to that next level. But again, Magnetico would be fine in the US because your shipping's not going to be a lot of money. But I think a Magnetico, to get it to the UK, the shipping is exactly the same price as the Magnetico itself. It's like £2,000 shipping.
Get it when you're on vacation.
100%.
And bring it back.
100%.
That's wild.
Next time when I come to Austin in April, I'll buy one. I'll get when you see this big thing shipped to your house, you're like, what's that? Like, damn it, Mark, stop sending stuff to my house.
Oh my gosh. This is okay. Very interesting. I feel like I love, the story just keeps building and building. I love it. Ceiling fans. I've heard this before. I've also heard that one of the biggest producers of non-native EMFs is your hair dryer. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so wild.
Yep.
So it's not like never dry your hair, never use a ceiling fan, but yeah, I mean, I live in a very hot place. It's not hot right now, but the summer without a ceiling fan in Austin, Texas, when it's like 107 degrees Fahrenheit is over 40 centigrade. It's a lot.
You need it. Definitely. Yeah. I think a ceiling fan would be better than an aircon unit. I don't like aircon units.
There's central air conditioning anyway. So we're going to have both.
Oh, wow.
Central air. Oh, yeah. Everywhere.
Yeah, we don't have that in the UK. We don't get temperatures that high enough to do that.
Oh, no. Everywhere in Austin has central air. So we don't have like window units. We have the whole place is just there's cooling vents all over. It's the same HVAC unit.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
So there's heat and cooling that comes from it. But there's again that trade-off. Like I don't want to sleep in a hot, like clammy room because my sleep's not going to be very good.
Yep.
So again, we can't all like move out to the forest and live in a hut. Like we have to live in our modern world. So there's going to be trade-offs to everything we do. And it's not like, oh my God, I'm, death by ceiling fan. Nobody's going to die because of the ceiling fan. No. It's like, we just need to get outside more.
Exactly. It's all about balance. More. It's all about balance, and this is something that I always teach with my clients. So I did a talk for a corporate, oh God, how long ago was this? Probably about 3 years ago. I was doing talks for corporates, and one of the talks I did was finding the middle path, why balance is the way. And this was all based around the Tao, like Taoism, basically. And the Tao is all about Wu Wei and the effortless art of doing nothing. Like how do you doing with how do they call it? It's the art of doing without doing, basically. It's flow. So in the Tao, in Taoism, they talk about the middle path. And how, if you imagine there's a seesaw and you've got the fulcrum point in the middle, you want to be standing with your feet either side of that fulcrum point in everything that you do.
Okay.
The reason why we have problems is because we swing in extremes. We're either CrossFit, HIIT, spinning every class at the gym, 6:30 in the morning after 4 black coffees and no food, or
completely sedentary.
We're sedentary.
Yeah.
We're working and building our empire, or we're not working at all. We're masculine, or we're feminine. There's never that balance in the middle. And life is about finding that balance. And unfortunately, particularly if you're coming from like that biohacking background, there is no balance in biohacking because it's, what other device can I buy? I've got a problem. What device do I need to buy? How about just go outside? I had this conversation. Sorry if you're listening. I had this conversation with a client when they first signed up with me. He's like, do I have to go outside? Yes. Well, I've got a red light panel. Do you have a garden? Yes. Right. What time do you wake up? 6. And I'm like, right, sunrise right now is 6:15. Just go outside. Well, can I just put my panel on? What?
Interesting.
So hang on. You would rather spend money electricity wise with a fake panel, which is only giving you 2 spectrums of light, than to go downstairs into your own garden and stand with your feet on the grass and just chill there for 10 minutes. Make it make sense.
This is a lot of people.
Right?
Zach Bush had a beautiful, I saw a reel that he said that we're the only species of animal that stops to look at the sunset. And we're like, oh, look at that beautiful sunset. All the monkeys are all doing whatever. Like all the animals are going about their day. But we are the only species that is observing nature, believing that we're not a part of it.
Wow.
And like, that was huge.
That's profound.
Yeah. And it's like a blessing and a curse in a way, because we do not think that we are a part of nature. We don't realize that we are of the earth, because we've got all these modern adornments and a cell phone and earrings on and whatever. Like, we are just as much of an animal as like the squirrel outside. Like, just as that squirrel, if you lock it in a cage in a house indoors and like feed it human food or like,
pet food,
whatever, like whatever food you think it should eat, and it's not using its natural senses, it's not going to be as healthy. Take a plant inside, ask my house plants, like, but we think that we're so separate and we're not. Like, none of the technology we have, like I'm looking at my infrared sauna, I have an orange light bulb, like none of these things are better than nature. I think that they may give like a higher, more intense dosage so they could be therapeutic, but they're not replacements. Like all of these things that we have, like my dear Align mat that you had the pleasure of getting to try, like you don't need that to be healthy. You do need to go outside though in order to be healthy. You have to go outside. That is like one of the non-negotiables. Like, you have to drink water, you have to eat food, you have to sleep, and you have to go outside for sure.
100%. And one of the things that I use to help people go outside more is this. 33% of the protons or electrons that we get in our body through the day comes from food. The rest of it should come from light. So what does that mean? Well,
light and grounding, right?
Yeah. So it means the more light you get and the more grounding you do, the less food you eat. Did you not notice how little food we ate when we were in El Salvador?
Oh, I was hardly hungry. Yeah.
There we go, right? We had a lot of food given to us, but I didn't eat a lot of it. I didn't need to.
Yeah.
Where in winter, in the darkness, like yesterday, I was indoors a lot more than I would normally be because we had like 60-mile-an-hour winds and torrential rain, so I couldn't really go outside. I did, but I got soaked.
Yeah.
But there wasn't much light, and I just noticed yesterday I was more hungry than I normally would be. So if you are somebody on a weight loss, or I don't like the word weight loss, fat loss journey, go outside more, and you will eat less because you're getting your electrons and photons from outside, not from your food. Food is the secondary part of it. If you go to hunter and gatherer tribes and you watch them, they're not sat there all day eating.
No.
They eat at specific points, but that's it. And it's not a lot either. So it's just a case of like, get outside more and you'll find that losing weight becomes a lot easier because you won't be as hungry. And you'll also be going to bed and waking up at the right times because you're getting that light signal in the brain, or in the eyes going into the brain, to tell all of your body clocks when you should be waking up, when you should be going to sleep. You'll naturally feel tired at the right time. You'll naturally wake up at the right time. Like, I don't remember the last time I used an alarm clock. Like, I naturally wake up now about 45 minutes before the sunrise.
Same. I'm like,
it's beautiful.
My mom has always called me a rooster. I've always been like that too. Well, she calls me a rooster because she's from New York. So.
Oh, is she? Oh, of course she is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear that accent. I love that accent.
Oh, she's got a really strong Brooklyn accent.
Oh,
I used
really?
to have a very strong Long Island accent, but I got rid of that.
How did you get rid of that?
I was a speech pathologist for for 10 years and
Wow.
studying that for 6. So when I moved to Miami, Florida, when I was in undergrad, and I was in a different state, but everyone was sort of from the Northeast. And so I kind of kept my accent. But then when I got to Florida, everybody was repeating everything I said. I'm like, can I have some water? And they're like, water. I'm like, can I have some effing water, please? And so, or I'd be like I'd say something as orange, and they're like, orange. I'm like, so everyone would just repeat what I said all the time. And then I was, speech pathologist, and I couldn't say orange instead of orange because it's a different vowel. It's R versus or. And so I had to learn how to not speak with that accent. And also,
wow.
It took a long time of working myself out of it. I would catch myself after. It's coming out now because I would catch myself after I said it, and then I would hear it, and then I would fix it. So I would say like after, I'm like after, and then I would start to catch it like just as I did just now, where I was like I could hear it was gonna come out of my mouth, but then I'm like after, and then I would be able to catch it more fluently. But sometimes if I'm just like thinking about New York or like talking about like it'll just start.
It came out then too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's just it's kind of like the floodgates open.
Yeah.
And it's like my brain's like no, not like that.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love both those accents. Like I think your accent's beautiful, and I think that the Long Island, the New York accent, the Bronx accent is lovely as well. Like I find accents fascinate me, and maybe you might know the answer to this. Like I have this, I don't want to call it like a skill. The longer I'm around somebody with an accent, the more like them I speak.
Oh yeah.
And I don't do it consciously either.
It's from the mirror neurons, I'm pretty sure, and it's also because of like accents. What you may notice is for the very, very vast majority of people, they don't have the accents of their parents. They develop the accents of their peer groups.
Yeah.
And so depending on where you are, your accent changes because accents are formed to form like bonds and to fit in and to, share. Like, I mean, yeah, it's just, that's why like a lot of people when I was in college were from Long Island, New Jersey, like around that area. So there was a lot of similarity with that. There it is again, similarity with the accents. And so I was able to keep it because it was all so similar. But then I went to Florida and it was like, I was like the odd man out.
Yeah, square peg round hole.
Yeah, my accent, I actually developed a Miami accent, which is like totally different. And my brother's like, what is wrong with you? So I had to get rid of that and then just kind of go as neutral as possible. But yeah, it's fascinating. So.
This stuff all fascinates me. It really does. Because even when you go back to like tribes, how the differentiating factors between tribes was how they spoke. It wasn't how they looked. It was the fact they could look the same, but one tribe would speak in this tone and another tribe would speak in this tone, and that would be the cause of conflict. That's how they'd know that they weren't the same tribe, is because they would speak different dialects or speak with a different tonality. So this always fascinates me how this has come around, because obviously there was originally one root, there was one language, I guess, or one sound. And that sound has transversed into these multiple different versions over millennia. And that just, sorry, it's a rabbit hole, but it just fascinates me, all of it.
Oh, I know. You're like me. I love learning. Like I could learn about anything, almost anything. It's just super fascinating. So to wrap up your story, you started embracing all of these things, light, water, magnetism. And what happened to the ulcerative colitis?
Gone. Completely healed. Like nothing. So I'll give you an example. So
I feel like
that oh, bless you, that moment going to my friend's wedding where I had the panic attack in the car, it triggered a very small flare up, I wasn't bleeding or anything like that, but the urgency came back where I'd eat and I'd feel like I need to go to the toilet, or I'd have a coffee's the word. By the way, anybody that's got IBD and you're in a flare, stay away from coffee completely. Just don't have any, not even decaf, nothing like that, because it's a cholinergic. It increases peristalsis through the stomach, so it will just make you go. That's why anybody that's listening, if you feel like you can't have a poo before you have your coffee, that's why. Stop having coffee, because that will retrain your bowels to do it themselves.
Okay.
It triggered a slight flare. So here I am, fully healed with quantum. And this is why this trip to El Salvador and to Austin was so important to me. A month before the flight, it sounds stupid, because obviously I knew I was going because I bloody paid for it, but it became very real that I was going. And all of a sudden, in the middle of a medicine journey, I'm sat down here on my meditation here on my floor doing a medicine journey. And I am petrified of getting on this plane. I've never been scared of flying in my life. I used to live abroad. I used to live in Spain, lived there for 5.5 years. And I used to fly backwards and forwards in Spain.
Okay.
So I lived there for 5.5 years and I flew backwards and forwards. Can't even count how many times. No problems with flying whatsoever. But I'm sat on this floor and all of a sudden I've got this fear of flying. I'm like, what is this about? So I went into the meditation and I went into the journey and asked my guides to take me through it, like show me what I'm scared of. And they showed me during my autoimmune stage, or during the autoimmune stage, should I say, when my body was in a flare. And I was like, oh, I don't trust my body. And they went, yes, it is not fear, it is trust.
Ooh.
You do not trust your body yet. You feel subconsciously that your body on the plane or in El Salvador or in Austin is going to give up and it's all going to start again. And you're going to be in a place where you don't have any control, because where you live, you control everything. You control when you wake up, your morning routine, when you start work, what you eat, where you shop, where you travel to. You control everything. You are not fearful of anything because you are in control. The reason why you are fearful is not fear, it's because you are going to lose control and you now don't trust your body when you don't control it. Learn to trust your body again. I broke down in tears on my floor with this. And I was like, just help me through it. Help me get through it. I have to go. This is so important to me. And they said to me, you are protected. You are going. Life changes the second that plane leaves the tarmac. And I was like, shit. They're like, we'll give you what you need to get you through it, but you will get on that plane. You will go and your life will change. Now, granted, I needed a diazepam and a Zopiclone sleeping tablet on that first flight, but the diazepam got me on the flight because I was calm. The Zopiclone is a sleeping tablet which made me sleep for 6 hours. So 6 hours out of the 11 hours asleep. The rest of the time I was reading my book and I was doing hypnosis to keep me calm. I was doing, I don't know if you know Marissa Peer. She's she's a beautiful human. Some of the best hypnosis I've ever done. And I just listened to her and David Bayer. David Bayer does law of manifestation meditations. I listened to those two for 4 hours, in between reading for 4 hours, basically on the rest of that flight. That's why that trip was so important, because up until that point, my whole physical body was healed, but my conscious programming hadn't been addressed. The anxiety, the distrust of my own body hadn't been dealt with. Once I dealt with that, once that plane took off and then I landed in Colombia and I was like, I effing made it. Like, I'm here. My body's not in bits. I'm not rushing to a toilet. Everything's okay. Then got on the flight and got to El Salvador and I was like, I'm in El Salvador. I'm like, holy shit, I've not left the vicinity of where I live since 2022. I haven't been on holiday since 2019. haven't left the UK. I'm like, oh my God, like I've left. I'm here. And I feel great. And everything's beautiful. And the world is right. And nothing's capitulated and everything's fine. And it lasted the whole time I was in El Salvador. Then I left El Salvador and I got on a plane and came to see you in Austin. And it lasted while I was in Austin. And it lasted while I was on my way home. And it lasted the whole way through Christmas and all the way up until now. And I'm just like, where am I going next? Like, where can I go now? Like, there is no limitation on my life anymore, because I realized the limitations that I had on my life were the ones that I put there. I enclosed myself into this isolated, single life where it was just me. Nobody else was allowed in. Nothing else was allowed to come in and shake the tree just in case. Now it's all good.
Yeah.
So the quantum, which I will include in that medicine journey, because we have to remember the fourth dimension, the ether, what the one, the universe, great spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, is the quantum, right? That healed it to the point where it went straight into the root of me and went, you don't trust you. That's the problem. Trust yourself. Believe that we are protecting you. You will be fine. Go with it. Path of least resistance. Just go with it. No plan is still a plan. Just go. Since then, everything's changed. Everything has changed since then.
That's amazing.
And that is why the quantum, plus getting to El Salvador, meeting a beautiful human like yourself and all the others that we got to spend time with, coming to Austin and spending more time with you, being taken out by you, and just getting to enjoy life, is the most important thing that I've done since 2022, because it's changed my life forever. And everybody that was involved in that, including you, I will never be able to articulate how grateful I am, or be able to express to you how grateful I am. Because without all of that, I wouldn't be here. I'd still be stuck in that repeating cycle. And it's the most freeing thing, the most freeing feeling, knowing that it all just came down to trusting me and removing my own self-limitations. So I just want to say thank you to you. I appreciate you for being part of that journey, because, as I say, I can't articulate how much it means. I genuinely can't.
Wow. But what a beautiful end to a long and trying journey. But it's that trust piece that definitely struck something in me. So I'm going to explore that concept for myself. So thank you so much for sharing. Mark, I actually need to hop off right now. I feel like we could chat forever. But where can people find you? I'll make sure to link everything in the show notes. I know you have a new podcast coming out.
I do.
So I'm super excited for that. I'll definitely be listening to your lovely accent more often now.
And you're going to be coming on as a guest on mine as well.
Yay,
so we'll get to hear your story too. So my new podcast is called the Decentralized Health Podcast. Nothing's been launched yet. The channel's up, but nothing's been added yet because I haven't actually filmed anything yet. You can find me on Instagram. I am Mark Dini Official on there. I'm Mark Dini Official on Instagram as well. Sorry, Instagram's Mark Dini Official. X is Mark Dini Official. Where else is there? YouTube is the same. I've got a very original name, so I'm sure if you just type Mark Dini, you will find me wherever you're looking, I'm sure.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story and all your wisdom. It was a blast.
Oh, bless you, my darling. Thank you for having me on your podcast and for allowing me the space to have this conversation. I appreciate you. I really do.